Hey, this is a video about the Akashic Records and past life healing. So if you don't know what the Akashic Records are, I'm going to explain a little bit about it. So basically I've been doing past life readings and work in the Akashic Records for a few years now. And the way that I like to explain the Akashic Records is basically like a massive library or supercomputer held in the higher dimensions that holds all of the knowledge about our soul's history. So where our soul has traveled to, our past lives, our karma, our karmic relationships, our soul contracts, any emotions, any events that occur in our lives and in our past lives is all recorded. So the word Akasha or Akasha, some people call it the Akashic Records, is the word Akasha is Sanskrit for sky and ether meaning spirit. So Akasha exists all around us and it is always recording the events of our life. So people, everyone can technically access the Akashic Records. But it is it's in those higher dimensional planes. So it means that your body or your level of consciousness has to be at a certain state in order to access this divine information. And it is divine because it's highly personalized, and you can actually be locked out of the Akashic Records if you're not using it responsibly. So for instance, when I do Akashic Records readings and soul readings with clients, it is completely confidential and I must get their verbal permission first in order to access these records, because they are sacred, because they hold the record of our soul's history, and this is very personalized information. So I like to describe the Akashic Records as like a supercomputer or like a giant library where, if we use the library example, every single soul on this planet would have their own shelf with a whole stack of books, maybe hundreds of books, recording every single past life that they have had. And so when I go into the Akashic Records, I use this prayer called the Pathway Prayer. And in that, I have to use their full legal name in order to get to that place in the Akashic Records where I'm going to be able to access their personal soul information and their soul journey. So the Akashic Records, it's not a new thing. It's not actually New Age. More and more information is coming out about the Akashic Records because of things like the internet and just the expanding consciousness we have happening on this planet right now. But people have been accessing the Akashic Records for thousands and thousands of years. And in the past, it's been accessed by high priests, psychics, mystics, sages. Usually that information was privy to those who were in a certain level of power or had a certain level of training. But the Akashic Records can actually be accessed by every single human being because we all have a soul and we all are divine in that way. So some people can inadvertently access the Akashic Records during really deep states of meditation or through the use of psychedelics, and they often describe something like this massive library with all these pillars and all these higher beings with hooded sort of clothes on, one sort of gliding around this huge hall, and that is the Akashic Records. And because it's held in those higher dimensions, though, we can't actually physically see it in this third dimension, but it does exist. So when I do an Akashic Records reading for a client, it's about accessing past lives or past experiences that their soul is wanting to heal. And that usually comes in the way of downloads that I get, so images about these past lives, or I get information, which all comes through my body, and then I can express it to the client. So it's almost like the Akashic Records healings are like informational healings, because once you understand your soul at a deeper level, you can transcend a lot of your karma, and you are able to move past emotional, physical, spiritual blocks that you may be experiencing in this current incarnation. So it's so interesting because a lot of us think that this is our only lifetime and this is the first time we've been on planet Earth. Now I can tell you that we've all probably had hundreds of past lives on this earth already. And for me, I love going into the Akashic Records and healing some of my past lives, not only in the way of healing past trauma that I need to let go of, that my soul has carried, but also because you get to know these parts about your soul that are integral to your being. So for instance, a lot of people that I do readings for, say for example they've chosen a career in the arts, it's likely that they've had many incarnations before where they have explored the arts as well, maybe just in a different way. So many clients that I read for, whatever industry they've moved into career-wise, they've often worked with before. So for instance, I've had lifetimes of being a shaman, a priestess. I've had lifetimes where I've been a healer, where I've been a witch. All of these types of healing professions I've had before. And I've been a teacher before, I've been a diplomat before. I've had all these lifetimes where I've practiced those skills, and then in this incarnation I'm wanting to build on those and to also integrate all of those skills that I've already got in my soul. So we hold all of this information about our past lives in our unconscious mind. So when you go into the Akashic Records or you're having a reading, that information is brought from your unconscious mind to your conscious mind, where you can integrate it and then release anything that needs to be released. So often the first Akashic Records reading that you have, or your first few, can be about clearing really traumatic experiences that you may have had in past lives. And we know throughout human history that it's quite brutal. So a lot of the clients that come to see me, it's because their soul is wanting to heal certain experiences. So a lot of us have had past lives where trauma has happened, and we may have died from these experiences, either like a lot of women, for instance, that I work with have had lifetimes where they have been prosecuted for voicing their spiritual beliefs. And that's one of the things that we can heal through the Akashic Records, and we can open up the throat chakras. So when you go into the Akashic Records as well, it's possible to do, and I do this with my sessions, I look at the chakras, the energy wheels in the body, and that is often a key to what's blocking those chakras in this lifetime. So sometimes we've had lifetimes where, let's say we've been murdered or raped or really awful things, and those soul memories can block our chakras in this incarnation. So it's a really fascinating experience to go into your Akashic record and find out what is it that your soul has experienced and what needs to be released in order for you to move past that in this lifetime. So it is like an energetic cleanse. And people, I'm always fascinated, after they've had an Akashic Records reading, you can see that they are lighter in the face. Like there is this shift that occurs in their consciousness through understanding a certain experience that they had in a past life and releasing it and healing it. And often it's just bringing that past life to the person's conscious awareness that they're able to just release it. And through doing that, they actually increase their personal vibration, which means their body and their consciousness is getting higher towards ascension. So for me, I go into the Akashic Records every single morning when I meditate, and that's because the Akashic Records are held in a high dimension. So our bodies can, it can take some time for us to get used to that vibration. So when I first started accessing the Akashic records, going into my own records and other people's, I would get very tired because our three-dimensional bodies aren't used to this higher vibrational information, and just the higher dimensions. Our bodies aren't accustomed to it. So I need to go into the Akashic records every day in order for me to be an effective healer in the Akashic records. And there's other things that I need to do to keep my body very clean, so I'm able to be a clear channel of that information when I'm doing a reading for someone. So yeah, like I have absolutely loved my journey with the Akashic records, and I absolutely love doing soul readings for people because I see the transformation that can occur through this type of healing. Yeah, and for me, when I was going on a soul journey a few years ago where I was traveling a lot, I used the Akashic records to access information about my soul in regards to which country I needed to visit and which place I needed to spend time in. So I spent a lot of time in Italy, and that's because I'd had past lives there that needed to be healed. And there was something about living in Italy for a bit of time that healed parts of myself. And a lot of the time, the countries that we're drawn to, if we're really like set on, say, visiting Brazil or visiting the States or visiting even like Iceland or places like that, often the countries that we're drawn to are countries that we have had past lives, and there's something that our soul needs to remember and needs to heal, and that's why we're drawn to those countries. And often countries that we're completely turned off by, it's usually due to a past life. So for instance, I have this complete aversion towards France. It doesn't even make sense in this lifetime. I have no experience of France. I've actually never been there. I've never wanted to go, but that hasn't really made sense to me until I actually went into the Akashic records and asked, why is it that I have this aversion towards going to France? And I found out that I've had quite a few lifetimes in France where the experiences have been quite traumatic, and where I've been living in poverty, and there's been a lot of political unrest, and yeah, there's been just some traumatic experiences for me, and that's why I have this sort of aversion to going to France in this lifetime, even though it doesn't make sense to me in this lifetime. So even things like irrational fears. So if you're someone who's, for instance, you have a fear of heights or drowning, or even like things like fear of spiders or whatever, and it doesn't make sense to you in this lifetime, it's usually because you've had a past life experience where you have drowned, or you have say fallen off a cliff or something like that, and your soul actually holds onto that fear until you're able to release it. And that's what the Akashic records readings are all about. It's about unlocking those parts of yourself through your soul journey, and releasing it from our unconscious, so we can liberate ourselves, and so that we can be, so we can raise our level of consciousness and move beyond that and change our behaviors. It's a really good tool for changing our stubborn, ingrained behaviors that we have. So just another example is that for me, I've had so many lifetimes where I have been prosecuted for my voice and sharing my spiritual beliefs, and I've had to do a lot of work on my throat chakra through the Akashic records in order to clear that, and in order to do a video, for instance, about the Akashic records, and to voice myself and get myself out there. That has been a real journey for me, and that is also a journey for so many other people I know who are on the healing journey, who are healers, who are light workers, who work in the sort of the spiritual realms. Healing the throat chakra is a huge huge thing that a lot of them need to go through, because they've been prosecuted for this in the past. So I'm going to leave the details of my website below. Thank you so much for listening, and if you have any more questions, please email me. It's a really big thing to get your head around, but once you understand the broader concepts of the Akashic records, it's really easy to understand how they can be of help. So thank you so much for listening. Yeah, see ya.